Good morning, friends. Chapter 10. When Dita goes into Freddie Hirsch's cubicle each afternoon to store the books, she tries to leave right away and avoid eye contact. She doesn't want to risk seeing anything that might break her trust. She'd rather believe in his goodness. But Dita is stubborn, and no matter how hard she tries, she can't rid herself of what she saw. Dita's sense of curiosity, piqued by the young teacher Ota Keller, has led her to spend her afternoons curled up in her hidden corner reading H.G. Wells. In the meantime, classes have finished in the hut and the pupils are playing games, taking part in guessing competitions, preparing plays, or drawing pictures with the pencils that have miraculously appeared. She wishes they had some of those exciting novels the teacher had talked about at their disposal. A Short History of the World is the library book borrowed most frequently because it's the closest thing to a regular school book. And there's no question that when she buries herself in its pages, she feels as if she were back at her school in Prague, and that if she were to raise her hand, she'd see in front of her the blackboard and her teacher's hand covered in chalk. The story of our world is a story that is very imperfectly known. A couple of 100 years ago, men possessed the history of little more than the last 3,000 years. What happened before that was a matter of legend and speculation. Wells is more of a novelist than a historian. In the book he talks about the creation of the earth, and the bizarre theories about the moon proposed by scientists at the beginning of the 20th century. From there he takes the reader through all the geological periods, the lower Paleozoic with the first algae, the Cambrian with its trilobites, the Carboniferous with its extraordinary swamps, and the Mesozoic, when the first reptiles appeared. Dita wonders in amazement over a planet shaken by volcanic convulsions and the subsequent marked shifts in climate, alternating between hot periods and extreme ice ages. The age of reptiles grabs her attention, with its colossally large dinosaurs that became the masters of the planet. This difference between the reptile world and the world of our human minds is one our sympathies seem unable to pass. We cannot conceive in ourselves the swift, uncomplicated urgency of a reptile's instinctive motives, its appetites, fears, and hates. She wonders what H.G. Wells would say about the world people now inhabit, if he would be able to distinguish the reptiles from the humans. The book keeps Dita company during the less structured afternoons in Block 31. It guides her safely as she makes her way through the subterranean passages of the imposing pyramids of Egypt and the battlefields of Assyria. A map of the dominions of the Persian Emperor Darius I shows her an enormous expanse of territory, far greater than any of the empires currently in existence. And the fact that Wells' commentary on priests and prophets in Judea doesn't match what they taught her as a child about sacred Jewish history leaves her feeling somewhat confused. That's why she prefers to return to the pages about ancient Egypt, which immerse her in the world of pharaohs with mysterious names and allow her to board the boats that navigate the Nile. H.G. Wells is right. There really is a time machine. Books. When the working day is over, she has to store the books before the final roll call. After standing in line for a torturous 90 minutes while all the prisoners' numbers are checked off, she heads happily for her class with her father. It's geography today. As she walks past Barrack 14, she sees Margit leaning up against the wall with Renee. They've just finished their roll call, which is far more unpleasant because it takes place outdoors. They look very concerned, so she stops to talk to them. "What's up, girls? Is something wrong? You're going to freeze out here." Margit turns toward Renee, who looks as if she wants to say something. Renee untwists a blonde curl on her forehead and chews it nervously. She sighs, and a wisp of breath spirals out of her mouth and disappears into the air. "That Nazi, he's harassing me." "Has he done anything to you?" "Not yet, but this morning he came to my ditch again and planted himself right in front of me. I knew it was him. I didn't lift my head. But he wasn't going anywhere. He touched me on the arm." "What did you do?" "I tossed a spadeful of dirt onto the feet of the girl next to me, and she started to screech like a wild animal. There was a bit of kerfuffle, and the rest of the German patrol came over. He stepped back and didn't say a word. But he was after me. I'm not making it up. Margit saw it yesterday." Yes, after roll call, the two of us were chatting before we headed back to our hut to see our parents, and he stopped a few steps away from us. He was looking at Renee, no question. Was he looking angrily at her? Asks Tita. No, he was just staring, you know, that dirty look that men have. Dirty? I think he wants to have sex with Renee. Are you crazy, Margit? I know what I'm talking about. You can see everything in a man's look. They stare as if they are already imagining you naked. I'm frightened, Renee whispers. Dita hugs her and tells her they're all afraid. She reassures her that they'll keep her company whenever they can. Renee's eyes are watering and she's trembling, but who knows if it's because of the cold or her fear. Dita picks up a small chip of wood and starts to draw some squares on the top of the snow-covered ground. What are you doing? Her two friends ask, almost in unison. Drawing a game of hopscotch. For heaven's sake, Ditinka. We're 16 years old. We don't play hopscotch. That's a kid's game. Dita continues to draw the squares meticulously, as if she hasn't heard Margit's comment. And when she's done, she looks up at them as they stand waiting for her reply. Everyone's gone inside their huts. No one will see us. Renee and Margit frown and shake their heads as Dita searches for something on the ground. The wood chip will do, she tells them, and she throws it into one of the squares. She jumps and lands with a wobble. You're clumsy, says Renee, laughing. You think you can do any better in this snow? Dita rebukes her, pretending to be angry. Renee tucks up her dress, throws the wood chip, and begins to jump with perfect accuracy, to Margit's applause. Margit goes next. She is the worst of the three. She stumbles as she hops and falls spectacularly into the snow-covered ground. As Dita tries to help her up, she slips on some ice and falls backward. Renee laughs at the pair of them. From the ground, Margit and Dita throw snowballs at her, which land on her in her hair and turn it white. And the three girls laugh. Finally, they are laughing. Dita, wet but happy, hurries off because it's time for her Wednesday geography class. On Monday it's math, and on Fridays Latin. Her teacher is Mr. Adler, her father, and her notebook is her head. She still remembers the day she came home to the apartment in Joseph and found her father, who no longer had an office to go to, sitting in the living dining room at the only table they had, twirling the globe with his fingers. Dita walked over with her school bag to give him a kiss, as she did every afternoon. Sometimes he would sit her down on his lap, and they'd play at naming a country, slowly spinning the globe on its metal stand, and stopping it suddenly, using a finger at the spot where they guessed the country might be. He seemed distracted on that particular day. He told her they'd sent a message from her school. Holidays. Now the word holidays is music to a child's ear, but the way in which her father had said it, and the sudden appearance of those unexpected school holidays made that music sound off-key. She remembers how her joy turned to distress when she realized that she would never have a school to go to again. Then her father signaled for her to sit on his lap. You'll study at home. Uncle Emile, who's a pharmacist, will teach you chemistry, and Cousin Ruth will give you art classes. I'll talk to them, you'll see, and I'll give you language classes and math. And geography? Of course. You'll get sick of traveling around the world. And that's what happened. That was during their time in Prague, until they were deported to Terezin in 1942. And they weren't such bad times when seen from the depths of Auschwitz. Up till the German occupation, her father had worked so hard that he hadn't had much time to spend with his daughter, so Dita was happy that he became her teacher. Now as Dita walks toward her father's hut, she occasionally looks behind her, just in case Mengele is hot on her heels. Although, if truth be told, she's more concerned at this point with knowing what to expect from the director of Block 31. Her father is waiting for her by the side of the hut, as he is each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if it's not raining. They sit down together on a large stone. That's her school. Her father has already traced a map of the world in the mud with a stick. When she was younger, her father would help her to remember places by telling her things like that the Scandinavian peninsula was a head of a giant serpent, and Italy was the boot of a very elegant woman. It is hard to recognize the world he's drawn into the mud of Auschwitz. Today we're going to study the planet's oceans, Adita. But she just can't concentrate on her lesson. She thinks about how much her father would enjoy the atlas in Block 31. Removing the books is prohibited, however, and with Mengele breathing down her neck, there's absolutely no way. She's too distracted to listen to her father's explanations, and on top of that it's freezing cold and it has started to snow. So she's delighted when her mother turns up a bit early. It's freezing. Leave it for today or you'll both catch cold. Here in Auschwitz, where there's no medicine and even enough blankets and food, colds are a killer. Dita and her father get up, and even though he's the one shivering with cold, he wraps his own jacket around Dita. Let's go to the hut. They'll be serving dinner soon. Calling a piece of dry bread dinner is really optimistic, Mama. It's the war, Edita. I know, it's the war. Her mother falls silent, and Dita takes advantage of the silence to raise the topic that's been worrying her, though she does so indirectly. Papa, if you had to confide a secret to somebody here in the camp, whom would you trust absolutely? You and your mother. Yes, I know that. I mean apart from us. Mrs. Ternovska is a very good woman. You can confide in her, her mother interjects. There's no question you can be confident that if you tell her something, even the head of the latrine cleaning brigade will know about it pretty quickly. That woman is as good as a radio, her husband replies. I agree, Papa. The most upright person I've met here is Mr. Tomasek. In fact, he came by not long ago to see how we were. He takes an interest in what's happening to other people. There aren't many people like that in here. So if you were to ask him for an honest opinion about something, you'd think he'd tell you the truth? Absolutely, but why do you ask? Oh, nothing special, just asking. Dita makes a mental note of Mr. Tomasek's name. She'll have to go and have a chat with him and see what he thinks about Freddie. Your grandmother used to say that the only ones who speak the truth are children and madmen, her mother adds. Dita thinks of Morgenstern. She can't just go to any adult with her doubts about a person of such high standing as Hirsch. They might accuse her of betrayal, or who knows what, in front of everyone else. But she doesn't run that risk with Morgenstern. If he were to spread her tale, she'd simply say it was another of the old man's crazy inventions. Would he know something about Hirsch? She tells her parents she's going to see Margit. She knows the retired old architect usually stays in Block 31 until it's soup time. Often in that hidden corner behind the woodpile she goes to when she wants to leaf through a book. The assistants aren't allowed to stay behind after classes are over, but Dita's the librarian, and that gives her certain privileges. That may explain why the other assistants seem to dislike her. Not that it really bothers her. Her head is full of worry and doubt. A group of teachers are chatting together inside Block 31. They didn't notice her when she comes in. She heads to the back and peeps around the woodpile. Professor Morgenstern is refolding an origami bird made out of a well-used piece of paper. Good afternoon, Professor. Well, it's Miss Librarian. What a delightful visit. He gets up and bows. Can I be of service to you? Oh, I was just walking by. A good idea. A daily half-hour walk extends your life by 10 years. A cousin of mine who used to walk for 3 hours each day lived to 114, and he died because on one of his walks he tripped and fell into a ravine. It's a pity that this place is so horrible that you really don't feel like going for a walk. Well, you can just move your legs. Legs can't see. Professor Morgenstern, have you known Freddie Hirsch for long? We met on the train bringing us here. That would have been in September. Precisely so. And what do you think of him? He strikes me as a distinguished young man. That's it? You don't think that's enough? It's not easy to find people with class these days. Good manners don't count for anything anymore. Dita hesitates, but she doesn't have many opportunities to be honest with someone. Professor, do you think Freddie is hiding something? Yes, of course. What? Books. Damn it, I'm already aware of that. Excuse me, Miss Adler, don't get upset. You asked me and I'm giving you an answer. Yes, of course, forgive me. What I wanted to ask you in confidence is if you think we can trust him. You asked some very strange questions. Yes, please forget that I asked. I haven't quite understood what you mean by being able to trust Hirsch. Trust in his confidence as block chief? Not exactly. What I wanted to ask was if you think he really is who he seems to be. After a moment's reflection, the professor replies, No, he isn't. He's not who he appears to be. No, nor am I, or you. Nobody is. God silenced our thoughts so that only we could hear them. No one else ought to know what we are really thinking. People get angry with me whenever I say what I think. Indeed. I think that's what you're asking. I think what you're asking me is whom can you trust in this hole called Auschwitz? That's it. I must confess. And as far as trusting, or what is understood by trusting is concerned, I personally trust only my best friend. And who is your best friend? Me. I am my best friend. Dita stares as he continues to smooth out the tip of his paper bird. She's not going to get anything useful out of him. When Dita reaches her hut, she lies down on the bunk. She hasn't seen Mengele for a couple of days, but she mustn't become overconfident. That man sees everything. She wonders if she could talk about Hirsch with Miriam Edelstein, the deputy director. But what if Miriam is his accomplice? It's all so confusing. She'll try to talk to Mr. Tomasek. As Dita's eyes start to close, an image pops into her head. She and Margit lie flat in the snowy ground. Renee looks on, and the three roar with laughter. As long as they keep on laughing, all is not lost. Have a good day, friend.